Decaf tea, Gus. I went, I think I went 100% caffeine free about a year ago.
Wow.
And you're alive to demonstrate.
I know. I wanted my energy to be my own energy.
Well, we city staff and myself may be a little sleepy today. We went until about what 12:15, 12:30 last night.
Oh wow!
On our council meeting, but we covered a lot, and it was really a lot of good stuff.
I will be right back, folks.
Yes.
I heard it was quite lively at certain points during the meeting.
No, it was nothing more than usual. Like, I've been doing it 18 years, so I've seen lively.
Yeah.
a lot more lively than this. Let me tell you.
It was low energy lively.
Yeah. It's and that's a good thing, Melanie. Really, when we have discussion and different points of view. So, excuse me, I have to take this. So.
Chief, how are the vaccinations going?
Real good. I was going to address that today, but I'll just run it down there. Yesterday, they were able to complete 210 distributions. It went very, very well. I think there was only one minor medical situation, but it was very minor. But the traffic flow worked fantastic. We had a nice setup there, and it just really seemed to flow very smooth. And one of the things I was really impressed with is because when we first laid out the plan, I was thinking, okay, they're giving half hour to get there, make sure that it's you, make sure you're on the right day, park, do your little questionnaire thing, get your shot, wait 15 and move out before the next flow of traffic and time. I was thinking that's a difficult coordination, but I'll tell you, it was spot on. It was perfect. And I think today they anticipate somewhere in the neighborhood of 435 vaccinations to be administered today. And then 500, I think, on Saturday.
Oh, so that's more than they originally said.
Yes. Yeah.
They had said 200, then 300, and then 400, but
yeah,
they're getting more doses.
They got some more, and I think it's going to put the 3-day total in the neighborhood of 1,070. And I can assure you, because I had a discussion with Dr. Burdick yesterday, that they were not going to leave any dosage, any vaccinations left standing, even if they had to find somebody to put it in there. So I anticipate they'll fulfill all of them today and all of them for Saturday for that 3-day total, which is fantastic. What a great boost for Cloverdale. And I think some pictures are going to be posted on the weekly, and I think some were posted on Facebook. But I really, really think for the city of Cloverdale, it looks fantastic. And I think the way it was organized between everybody worked out really well. So
I'm so
happy to hear that. I'll continue encouraging people to try to sign up and get a vaccination then.
Great.
That's great, Chief. Good to hear.
I want to say our own Mary Dixon, those of you who know Mary Dixon, got her vaccinations just so that she could go out there and help with that. And she helped yesterday with 200, and she's helping today with over 400. So yeah, so I got that word, and that's really great. I was so happy that it went so well.
How did she feel about it, Al? Did she report to you that she felt it was since she was out there?
She said it went so well, it was exciting, but she was tired.
Yeah.
It was nonstop.
I have to tell you, I helped my wife through the process, not that she needed it, but we went online and we made her appointment. We made my mother-in-law's appointment, and it was so simple. It was so easy, that portal to get registered. And yesterday she went, and it was smooth sailing. And she said there was quite a few people there, but there was no major waits or lines. So they're doing a good job.
So awesome to hear. So,
sounds to me like the way to do it.
Yes. Good morning, Christina. Christina, I still have the banners that we hung in the plaza for the graduation. Would you like those?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, that'll be great. Do you want me
Somehow,
to? Oh, go ahead.
oh no, somehow I will get them to you.
Okay.
Whatever is easier for you. I can
Okay.
meet you at City Hall and just hand them off. I'm not sure if you're going to use them this year or not. And
Well, probably not because they have the year 2020, but maybe we could talk about, maybe we can talk to Low Knob Press about recycling them.
Mhm.
You know, I can talk to Michael about that to see if we can recycle them, maybe use them again
Yeah.
for this year.
I know
Sometimes-
in the past, he's actually done something that can go over the 2020 and make it
Okay.
2021. So
Okay.
it might be a little less expensive. So
That would be a great idea. I can look into that because I think that it would be nice to be able to commemorate our seniors this year. I mean, there hasn't been anything really for them.
Right.
I did see that the track season is scheduled to open in February, so that's going to be great. It'll give them some hope.
good. Well, Susie, Melanie, whenever you think we should start, it's 8 minutes after. Would you like to give it a couple more minutes? No?
I think we're ready.
Okay. Well, then why don't we go ahead and move ahead. Today with us, as you can see, I have our city manager, David Kelly, who's going to say a few words throughout the course of the meeting. And then I have Mark Rincon, our city engineer. And Mark is going to give us a small presentation on the capital improvement project rollout, or I should say update that the city council received last evening. And he's also at some point going to share with you what exactly is a capital improvement project and why did we call it that. And then, of course, we have Chief Ferguson, and he's just going to let you know what's happening with the Cloverdale PD. I'm not so sure that there's, of course, I don't know, but I'm not so sure that there's too much to say, or and that's a good thing. So
Before you
let's-
start, can I just say that I may have to drop off and rejoin on the phone, just in case you guys wonder.
we'll
And
be
Susie
here,
will be
Al.
looking. What's that?
I said we will be here. So.
Thank you.
So last night we had our city council meeting, and like I said, it was rather a lengthy one, but I'm just going to share with you a couple of the quick highlights. We had a presentation by the county on their 5-year strategic plan. And, Supervisor Gore was here and he addressed a few things. One of the things I think that a lot of the city council members have concerns with, and he indicated last evening, is the different islands that we have here in Cloverdale. Church Lane is owned by the county. The infrastructure is not up to standards. We also talked about McQuarrie Road, where the infrastructure is really poor. And hopefully we can come up with some type of a wish list. He suggested that we could provide the county when they're doing their strategic plan and they're finalizing it in a couple of weeks, where they can have an attachment to his district specifically for Cloverdale. So I'm looking forward, and I know my fellow council members are working with staff on coming up with that wish list. The other thing that we did last evening was the Letson project, the 21 apartments on South Cloverdale Boulevard. The zoning was changed from an R1 to an R3, allowing them to move forward with the 21 apartments on that site. The vote came in on a split vote, 3 in favor. Councilmember Bagby, Vice Mayor Cruz, and myself voted to support that project. Councilmember Lands and Turner, Mayor Turner, chose not to. So I think it would be a good project for the community. We also had a presentation of our capital improvement project. And like I said before, city engineer Mark Rincon is going to be reviewing that with you. And we finalized the subcommittees and that'll be available on the internet pretty soon. And in addition, we directed the mayor at the mayors and council members meeting who to vote for with the county and regional boards. And I'm pleased to say that Councilmember Bagby hopefully will be on the SMART board.
Good, how are you?
She was the only one that put in her name, so we're hoping it's a slam dunk, but you never know with politics. So with that being said, David, would you like to say anything before Mark shares with us some capital improvements? And Mark, just so you know, we try and keep this to about an hour, and there's other speakers, so you know, if you could just keep it on point, that'd be great.
Councilmember Wolter and members of the group, Coffee with the Mayor, thank you for joining today. And I know Mark will cover the capital improvement program. Just one other item to mention that was on the agenda last night was an update on our water source at the Russian River. And very technical. There was a presentation by Sonoma Water engineering staff about our primary water source being Lake Mendocino. And I encourage you, if you have the time, to take a look at that. It provides a really valuable update on some of the drought conditions that we're experiencing, as well as some of the management tools that Sonoma Water is employing to try to preserve as much water as they can behind Lake Mendocino's dam. So that I just wanted to mention that was another update by one of our regional water partners, Sonoma Water, who is a wholesaler for many of our cities except Cloverdale. But they do manage a lot of the water infrastructure that serves Sonoma County. So if you have a chance, I'd encourage you to review that part of the presentation as well. It was a long meeting, so you may have to kind of cue in where that presentation was on YouTube, but I think it provides a valuable update. That's the end of my comments, Councilmember Wolter.
Gus, you're muted.
I always do that. Thank you, David. I completely forgot about the water agency giving a presentation. So, Mark, would you like to tell us a little bit about some capital improvement projects we have going, and specifically maybe the water agency, because that's an issue that'll be coming back City Council shortly.
Yeah, so as some background, the last time the city of Cloverdale updated its CIP, or Capital Improvement Program documentation, it was probably done in 2008, 2009, and adopted by City Council late 2009, early 2010. So the document has aged. We try to update these CIPs in general every 5 years. Unfortunately, it wasn't done the last time because we went through the Great Recession and no projects were being done at that point. We just kind of weathered it out, and now we're back to redeveloping our CIP. So as you can see, we hired a consultant to kind of help us through this, interview staff, take up the old plan, look at other documentation that the city has, and basically came back with what we foresee as the needs. Now, what you see in front of you is just the overview of the financial commitment to get some of these projects done. And these are, remember, these cost estimates are just order of magnitude. They're not construction cost estimates. So this is a starting point to kind of help us budget through and also set some rates to help fulfill this obligation. Water, wastewater, our enterprise fund. Stormwater, parks and landscape, civic improvements. Some of those are supported by impact fees, but for the most part, they are supported through the general fund. Likewise with the airport, even though it's considered an enterprise, it does not make sufficient revenue to cover the costs there. Good thing about the airport though is that the Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, covers the bulk of those costs shown. There's a match from the city of Cloverdale on that. It's minimal. It's what, David, is it 10%? I believe so. And also even Caltrans has an aeronautic division, believe it or not, and they too contribute a minor percentage. So that kind of sums up our financial obligations. As you can see, we plan out in a 5-year horizon. Like I said, we like to update these every 5 years because past that, they make no sense financially. And so you can see that 27 and beyond, we have some significant costs coming up, and it's more of not the beyond not being, you know, at the end of the century. We're talking closer to 2030 and thereabouts. Specifically, I want to point out the wastewater improvements at 2027 and beyond. You see that $99 million, about, let's call it 100 million. And again, these are just order of magnitude costs. That is because the wastewater treatment plant can no longer fulfill its permit obligations on waste disposal. We'll have to go through a higher level of treatment and advanced treatment, or better known as tertiary treatment. And the water coming out of that tertiary treatment is a resource. We can consider it a resource. We need to start thinking of it as a resource, since water is so complicated here. And believe me, I've worked in projects in Australia and Latin America where the wastewater, when you treat it to that level, you don't waste it, you reuse it. And the state, the federal government, EPA, are moving to the point where that reuse will include not only irrigation, but consumption. So we all need to start thinking about it's a resource, and it'll help meet our future gaps that may occur as we continue to develop in the state, and the state just can't meet the water resource obligations. And also especially given the uncertainty with climate change and how you can see our weather patterns are starting to become somewhat unpredictable. So if you want to go on to the next slide, we can kind of get into some specific. Now we kind of classify the improvements that are needed as mandated, meaning mandated by the state rules, federal rules. So these are things that we have to do. For example, the advanced treatment would be a perfect example where that's a mandated project. We can't just treat to secondary treatment standards. We have to treat to tertiary treatment standards. So that's a mandate. Necessary are things that we have mechanical systems, we have aging infrastructure that it's necessary to either do some major repairs or replace it. And necessary would be, for example, pipeline replacements. We've got some very old pipelines in distributing water. They need to be replaced. We can't wait for them to fail, and then the cost of replacement is tripled what it could have been. So those are the kind of necessary. And desirable are like things that we should be doing. It's not fluff. I don't want you to think it's like fluff. It's like fencing for security. Those are, yeah, they're desirable. We should get those done because it's security. However, it doesn't take precedence over the necessary and mandated. So that's why that third category is something that we need to get done, but it has a little bit more flexibility in terms of timing and delivery. If you continue down, you can see some of the capital improvement projects for the water system there. If you could scoot down a little bit, there you go. So you can see the priorities set up for each of these. And there's quite a number. I mean, it's an exhaustive list. The timing is, it can be adjusted a little bit. And the timing also needs to reflect the financial realities that the city of Cloverdale faces. Granted, these are enterprise funds, so they're supported by your monthly bills that you get for water consumption. And so there's a support there. It's not sufficient to cover all these needs. That's why we're going through the rate study and trying to adopt a rate study that will support these vital projects. Again, you're looking at a lot of projects there, and staffing that we have is limited in terms of project delivery. So we depend heavily on engineering support, outside engineering support, and also, of course, construction contractors to get these things built. As these things are costly, the city pays a premium for its construction. We pay, prevailing wages, and that tends to up the cost of a project 25% as compared to the private market. Anyways, you'll see a number of projects there. I don't want to, I guess, bore you, but lots of enhancements in terms of supply wells. Wells don't last forever. They have to be redeveloped or re-drilled. And so we're looking at rehabilitating, which means redeveloping some wells. Those are costly projects. Usually the screens are rotten by then. We have to pull them out. Depending how bad the resource is in terms of can we draw as much water as we did historically, those things need to be analyzed. So we'll hire a hydrogeologist to help us through whether that well is worthy of redeveloping or we should be considering another location. Lots of infrastructure. Once you drill a well, of course, you got to move it to the plant, pump, it takes a lot of planning and design to get it right before we get into construction. Again, another one's Cherry Creek Reservoir rehabilitation. If anybody's been up to Cherry Creek, the reservoir up there is old. I don't have the exact age on there, but it was built in probably the late 60s, and it's a single tank, which is not the way a modern water system operates. You usually have redundancy built in just because of you have to pull these tanks out of service eventually and rehabilitate them. Right now, we don't have that option at Cherry Creek. It's been in operation since it's been built. What I'm looking there is to build a second reservoir. We're doing the feasibility study if the site is sufficiently large enough to get a second tank up there. And if that's the case, we will initiate the Cherry Creek Reservoir number 2, have it built, ready. And then we'll determine when we pull Cherry Creek 1 out of service, whether it needs to be rehabilitated or rebuilt. Cherry Creek, like some of our other reservoirs, are bolt together steel plated tanks. They're, in my opinion, I've done a lot of reservoirs. They're not the best method system. I'm sure some of these vendors will argue against that, but welded steel tanks the way to go, in my opinion. It not only performs better in terms of less seams, so less potential leakage, but also in terms of performance in a seismic events. They wobble, but they wobble well. Unlike bolt together, you're going to get a lot of loose bolts and a lot of leakage. Again, all our facilities are aged. They need a lot of, even upgrades in terms of seismic. I brought up seismic in terms of seismic stability. We bolt them to the ground, but recalculating and bringing it up to what's better understanding of what's the potential. Sometimes that system is not sufficient, and we got to consider sloshing, and so there's a lot of complicated analysis that goes into these reservoirs. And again, these are just out of date. Looking down the list here, picking another one here, random sludge drying bed. Okay, so right now we have one that's been in continuous use. And sludge from a water treatment plant is not the sludge you get at the wastewater treatment plant. It's a little bit different. This is just naturally occurring sediments that when you pump water, it comes through the plant. We filter it out and we get rid of it. We put it in a sludge drying bed where eventually when the bed gets evaporated and full of sediments, we'll haul it out of there and take it to a facility to get it out. And so right now I'm looking for a lot of these projects are for redundancy. We can't depend on just one system each time because we're vulnerable and we put ourselves at risk. So this is adding a second sludge drying bed so we can circulate, get them through. Rather than continue to backwash and refill the same sludge bed, we can eventually let it evaporate and then get the sludge out of there. Because right now the way we deal with it is we pump it out and it's wet, and that's very expensive to move wet material, a lot heavier than dry material.
Mark,
yeah,
I believe Al had a question.
Okay.
Al, did you have a question? I know you might have to leave, so.
No, I'm going to wait a few more minutes and see if we
Oh.
get to it, and see if he answers it. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, why don't you, Al, why don't you tell me specifically where you want me to jump? Because I'm kind of jumping around randomly.
Well,
on this
no, it had to do with the wastewater improvement
Okay, let's go to
CIP
the
overview.
wastewater. Sure, we can jump down one
And I
page.
can't see it yet, so it was kind of unfair.
Yeah. All right, there you go.
And Mark, maybe as you, in between sentences, you can share with everyone how many employees, this is so impressive for me, how many employees we have working in the water department and in the wastewater to run this massive enterprise that we have.
Yeah, we have 2 each. So the water has 2 operators and the wastewater has 2 operators. They're licensed through the state. They're licensed to operate their facilities. And I'll tell you one thing, it's statewide, I should say nationwide, it is an issue to find licensed operators. There was a set of operators that are retiring, you know, the baby boomers are retiring. And getting young adults interested in this field has been a challenge for us. But yeah, wastewater treatment and water treatment is a specialty. It requires no advanced degrees, but it requires you to pass state examination and routine upkeep of your licensing. And so 2 each, and it is a challenge because it is a large enterprise, but a small staff to support it. And so often our employees are required to work overtime because this is a 24/7 operation. And with 2 employees, that's impossible. So we have them work day shifts, 8 hours, but then we have SCADA systems, which is SCADA system is a computer control. And with the SCADA, they get dinged at night saying, hey, there's something wrong. They have to go down there, we pay overtime. So it's probably not the most efficient way to run a facility, but it's the only one really available for when you have limited staff. Al, you had a specific question on the wastewater.
I did, and I was looking at your list here, and I don't see any purple pipes around Cloverdale. Is there any reclamation distribution system in Cloverdale?
We have nothing planned. It's a very good question. Most cities do start installing when they do pipe installation. They'll do a purple pipe or a reuse pipe, water that comes from the wastewater treatment facility, treated to a highest standard, and that purple pipe is used for domestic irrigation. We don't have that in the books, nor are we planning it, because our plant does not produce the quality of water that's needed. And secondly, that's very expensive to put in a whole new distribution system for purple pipe. It's great, but if our facility goes to tertiary treatment, we will have that resource available. Irrigators will take it for the most part. That's how it's done in Southern California.
Yeah, that's where my question came in, is if you have to go to the mandated tertiary treatment and you have that, what are you going to do with, what you're doing with the water now is not relevant.
Exactly. And that's why here within the next 5 years, we're going to initiate the planning process, because we do need to go through the planning process for determining how that resource can be distributed. Like I said, in Southern California, they tend to give it to the irrigators, but irrigators shut down in winter. So what do you do with that water in the winter time? You're not allowed to dispose of it per se back into the Russian River. You have to land apply it.
Well, yeah, within reason, obviously you have.
Yeah, and so,
specifics.
Projects that I've been on is we build these storage facilities to store as much water as we can on site or off site. And again, there's a lot of questions, a lot of complications. Need to work through the engineering and planning process to kind of balance the load. Where are we going with this? And also by then, I'm hoping that the state of California and the EPA will have better rules and understanding on its reuse. Because again, initially the best reuse was to go ahead and distribute it throughout the cities through a purple pipe method. Very expensive, probably not the most efficient. The future will be taking that tertiary water and putting it back into the water treatment plant for distribution and using your existing infrastructure to distribute the water. And it won't be for irrigation, it'll be for consumption.
Okay. Yeah, I was just curious because I didn't see anything down for that, and then and
Yeah,
I didn't notice that
again,
there was a system there. And I guess in Santa Rosa they use that system, and it reaches other cities as well. As far
It's
as
limited.
irrigation.
It's limited. We can't, Santa Rosa nor any city can afford purple pipe down every block, and so
No,
that's
I know. Yeah.
and I know some new developments in Southern California have it's they force the developer to put in purple pipe. It's just another complication in that you get cross connections and then you get cross contamination. So that's a whole another hour discussion, but
Yeah. Okay.
there are
I was
risks
just curious.
associated with that. Alrighty, well, thank you. Again, looking at the CIP for wastewater, there's a number of things. SCADA upgrades, I think that's a misnomer. It's for SCADA introduction, because the SCADA system they have is more of just a graphic interface, no controls available remote there. And that's something that I've been planning on for a while. I see they got it in 2024, which is probably reasonable because there's some planning that has to happen before that can be installed. So, and likewise, earlier, I didn't talk about the SCADA system at the water treatment plant, but that was installed about 7 years ago. And it too was funded through an FDA loan. And these are expensive little systems, and it only does the water treatment plant. It has nothing in the distribution system, and that's where its expansion is necessary, because we got to better control our reservoirs rather than just depend on switches that pressure switches. All righty, let's see, looking at GIS mapping. Here's one. I think the timing is a little off on that because we've already started that for all our utilities. GIS is a geo reference, I can't even think of the name anymore, but it's a geo reference mapping where you go out and you measure using a GPS system, very accurate, down to 1/10 of an inch in the XY and about one half an inch on the Z plane. And you go out and you measure all the locations of your system. With that information, now you have a very accurate map, and you have it in 3 dimensions. And then with that, you take and you create hydraulic models, and you see what the flow of various points. And before you know it, you can see where you're going to have system exceedance, overcapacity, overbearing at certain locations. And so that's where you it helps you plan out improvements to the system as the system continues to grow or age. South Assey Road Sewer Main Extension and Lift Station. As you know, the city is developing at the south end of town. And at that, we're kind of exceeded where the Renner Station is the last point where we can gravity drain sewage back to the sewer plant. From that point southward, things are going to have to be lifted up or pumped into the wastewater treatment plant. So that's where we're planning a future facility that will support that area. And we're kind of setting that up as a separate district, financing district, some sort of financing apparatus, so that any future needs in that area is not a burden by the ratepayers, but is specific to that area. So the infrastructure specifically, and then I'm talking about, so the South Assey Road Sewer Main Extension and Lift Stations. Hopefully we can develop a financing means as developers move into that area to help pay and offset the cost of this. Biosolids removal, here's another one where we're going to be starting that up here this fiscal year. But as the current treatment plan, the way it's established is that we have settling ponds. That's where the sludge settles out, and it eventually starts to fill up the pond. And so we hire a contractor to come out and remove it. And it's a costly job because the waste has to go to specialized landfills that you just can't send it to the Sonoma County landfill or Marin County's landfill. They have to go out to the valley, and its sludge is somewhat wet. So the trucking costs are expensive, and it's several large trucks that haul it out. Future plant, a more modern wastewater treatment plant, will have a separate solids handling facility where you have either presses or other mechanical means of dewatering the sludge. And those are typically trucked off weekly or monthly, depending on what the load is. So you can see there's a number of projects here. It's, I'm limited in time in terms of going into all of them, but yeah, our water and wastewater systems are complicated. They're hidden, which kind of keeps the public eye off of them. And it's like, what's the issue? Why are we spending so much money on it? But it's complicated. It's a very complicated system, and systems do age. They don't last forever. This is not the Roman aqueducts. It's just, we're gonna have, especially for mechanical systems, you're lucky if you get 20, 25 years out of them before you're spending a lot more money on them for maintenance, and you run the risk of failure, catastrophic failure. And that's what we're trying to avoid. Slip line, that's just where we don't want to replace the pipeline because we really don't have the money for it. So we have this contractor come in. He basically fills up a sock. Think of a sock along this pipeline, superheats it with super hot water, not just boiling water, super hot water. And it has chemicals in it, plasticides, that will harden and adhere to the existing pipeline. And then voila, you got a lined pipe that will function for another 15, 20 years. Complications there, though, is that you had to reestablish the laterals. And so it's a nice method of extending the life of a pipeline. However, you only do it once, because every time you do this, you reduce the diameter of the pipe, and then you get into the point where you may be surcharging your sewers because of the limited, you're narrowing the diameter. Yep.
I was going to say, I wish you could walla a few of the other expenses here that we have. But before you move off of water and wastewater, I find it interesting that 8.4 million for the South Asti lift station is technically, it's listed as necessary. I mean, we don't develop that south part of town without it. Am I correct on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
right now, the warehouse that's going down there, the co-op, the Vintners co-op warehouse, they can't make gravity. I had them install their own personal pump station to remove their sewage and bring it to a manhole that's in front of the renter station. So again, these are stopgap measures until we can get a proper lift station. And the developer of Vintners Co-op has agreed to participate in any future financing district that we may establish down there, so that we can put in all the facilities that are needed and maintain those facilities. Is there any other questions? Because I know I've been talking nonstop. Gus, you're muted.
thank you. It's interesting too, on the master sheet, listing all of the projects, there was 64 of them. 37 of those, more than half, revolve around water and wastewater. I mean, that's just how important just this one enterprise fund is for the city of Cloverdale. It's
indeed, and just not to cut short or anything, but our water and wastewater systems in the U.S. in general are second to none. Our potable water is consumed. You can go to any other city in the United States and be confident that the water is safe. In Latin America, that's not the case. You don't drink water. So those of us who continue to buy water in plastic bottles, you're throwing your money away, honestly, because the water quality coming from your tap is much better than what's coming out of that plastic bottle. And so, you're consuming a resource through a manufacturer, and you got the plastic waste, et cetera. So I don't want to preach to the choir here, but if you have friends that are just totally hooked on plastic water, tell them to try tap water. They may not say, well, it tastes like chlorine. Sit it on the counter. Half an hour later, hey, the chlorine's dissipated. It tastes like water, like regular water. So, again, I've been in water resources my whole career, started at East Bay Mud, worked there for 15 years, and they do a phenomenal job of managing their resource, treating it, distributing it, collecting the sewage, treating it, and getting it, into reuse. So again, I've cut my teeth on water resources and wastewater, and this is my passion right here. So.
And the other thing too, Mark, you had mentioned about dropping new wells because they don't last forever. And I think, part of the problem there, and I'm not sure if you agree or not, is the meandering river. The river is constantly shifting to the east away from our wells. As a result, when we're pumping, we're picking up more sludge, which limits the life of that pump. So I think one of the things that we had kicked around, and I'm not sure if it's still on the drawing board, it's been a while since we've talked about it, when the crosswalk for the First Street Bridge is put in by the county, one of the things we'd like them to do, or we'd like to do, is suspend a pipe, drop a well on the east side, and then pump the water over to the filtration plant. Because we got to start thinking that the river is continuing to shift east. Nobody will let us get in there and dredge it to make it stay in the middle. So that also affects our water.
Right. So I have a comment on that. I've been working with the county on their pedestrian bridge design, and they know that our need to suspend a pipeline underneath that pedestrian bridge. So that's kind of covered. In terms of our wells are very shallow. They go down 30 feet, 50 feet, and basically they're capturing the flow of the river through gravel beds, basically the natural occurring gravel beds. The city has a sliver of property on the other side of the river, and that'll probably be the next site for the pump station well site to pump water from that side of the river and get it across to the water treatment plant via this pedestrian bridge. That's going to be a nice little project. Again, it's still in the early concept stage. We'd have to, of course, go through the whole process of planning it out, going through to make sure the hydrogeology is good at that location. We may have to even acquire another acre at that site, because right now that little sliver of land that the city has is too much in the floodplain. We would have to put an elevated facility there, and it's probably not big enough yet. But yeah, very, very good point. When we redevelop wells, or we look at other locations within the city's limits, within the city's ownership, to see what other location. And Cloverdale is lucky because it has one of the senior water rights in the river. Before curtailment happens for the city to withdraw the resource, irrigators will have to curtail first. So, but it's our social responsibility, of course, to curtail our use. It's state mandated as well. So we're coming into a drought season, and so don't be surprised if we're going to have to roll out some sort of cutback on consumption. And those of you who have lawns and everything, I strongly encourage you to look around town and see what people have done with their lawns in terms of converting it to a more natural looking garden in front of their house, rather than just watering a lawn, using more native species and just a lot less irrigation. And it looks fantastic. So again, encouraging you. And I know we discussed last night about joining the partnership so that we can use their educational materials and get the word out on resource saving. Luckily, through the years, our toilets and showers have become very efficient. So we're not going to squeeze a lot more efficiency out of that. The next big focus has to be our irrigation. And about 40% of the water that we distribute is used for irrigation. And so it's a little excessive. Again, we're in a very hot, unique region, and we need to plant accordingly. That's my spiel on the upcoming drought. And there's any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
It's quite obvious that, and I'm hoping that we could do some workshops when we again visit the water rate increase that we're looking for. The product that we sell is very inexpensive for the city. I mean, we just put a straw in the river. It's all the infrastructure to get it to the tap so that when you turn the spigot on, you've got a quality product coming through there. That's where the expense is.
Oh, absolutely.
And the other thing is, Mark's been referring to a silo fund, enterprise fund. And for those of you who don't know, for example, the water bill that you pay the city for, that has to go back into that silo, into that enterprise fund, and can only be used to bring you the product. We can't use that in a general fund to pay for salaries, to pay for police or anything outside that fund. So, but
Correct.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Mark.
No worry. That's a very good point. It is law. It is U.S. Basically every water agency, every city that has water is set up similarly. It's a mistake to believe that the water funds are used for other items, or the wastewater funds are used for other items. That's not the case. It's illegal. No city does that. No water district does that. So one of the issues too, I mean, getting off topic here a little bit, are some of our community water systems to the south are failing. They've been dinged by the State Water Board for not having the governance to manage it, and B, the water quality, or C, the redundancy needed to serve water to their constituents and so their customers rather. And so a lot of these water systems, like 6 acres, is been deemed no longer viable. They need to basically get water from the city. There are 2 options for getting water to the city. One of them is through an outside service user agreement, OUSA they call it, and that allows them to maintain their little district and get the water from the city through a master meter. That's kind of frowned upon by the state because their system is not, they don't have individual house meters. So they pump the water and basically deliver it to they chlorinate it somewhat. I don't know what the water quality is, and then they distribute it. And there's a fixed cost from pumping, and that's it. And they distribute that amongst everybody. So there's no encouragement for water conservation on the individual household. And so the state wants every household metered. And so this system just does not fulfill that. And it's just way too expensive for them to replace everything. So they're looking to merge that system into the city. Before they can merge that system into the city, there's several steps that have to happen: engineering study, environmental studies, et cetera, et cetera. And we can't accept that infrastructure as is, because it becomes a burden to us. It just does not meet our standards. So again, that's one location. The other one is South Cloverdale, where they have probably a little bit better governance, but still, nonetheless, the state has told them you need to get your water elsewhere because they only have 1 well, not enough. So it's more of a water resource issue for them and water quality. And so they're looking for a master meter, but these are policy decisions that council needs to weigh in on, because if they go for an outside service user service agreement, that pretty much keeps them in the county, basically. So we have this little section of town that's in the county. And I know that has a lot of political ramifications. So I'm not going to dwell on that. But again, these are, not only are we concerned ourselves with our own system, we have to be concerned about our neighboring systems that have been deemed a failure, and that the city, being the most viable location to get their water resource, is mandated to assist and participate in that. And the state will help pay for water and wastewater, I should say water infrastructure. They kind of neglect the other things that come along. If you're going to incorporate this area, what about streets, sidewalks, lighting, sewage, etc.? In order to become into the city, you got to be city-like, and rural doesn't cut it. Okay.
We're talking about that Church Lane area to the south.
Church Lane, Loud Lane, there's a lot of, those are all county. And, when you drive to Columbus, they say, wow, what is this area? What happened to it? It's in the county. And that's the issue. There's no sidewalks there. There's no sidewalks in South Cloverdale Boulevard, etc. So it's there's a lot of need, and who pays for it? That's the bottom line.
Well, Mark, we're starting to run out of time here, but
Yep.
you know, just that Church Lane and that whole 6 acres water area, you know, it's going to come before the council at some point. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and I'm still highly upset that, you know, because the state didn't supervise and keep track on the water agency 6 acres. Now the city of Cloverdale gets to help them pay for it. And the last time we looked at it was somewhere, you know, out of pocket for the city.
Right. So that's, you know, I'm glad James Gore asked for us to participate in their master planning effort, because those areas that are bordering the city, they've been long neglected. They need help. We understand that. The county needs to understand it, and the county needs to pony up some money.
Yeah.
Because we can't just incorporate them into the city and not expect, you know, some sort of help in terms of all the infrastructure needs.
If I may, I'd like to also, this is Christina Lepeduarte. I'd also thank you very much, Mark, for your time and for explaining this. This is very informative. I also want to echo what you guys just touched on as far as us incorporating other areas and not getting compensation for that. Because in all honesty, it's concerning. I mean, we see year 2022 through 2026, and that all seems very reasonable, but then we get to 2027 and beyond, and that $85 million wastewater treatment plant upgrade just is downright scary. Very, very scary. And I understand the reality of it all, but my concern is, you know, when 2027 comes around, I mean, I'm just concerned with the fact, and it's nothing new, but the fact of the increase of these water bills that our residents are going to have to pay. And it's not like it's just temporary. It's not going to just be, you know, for 5-10 years. Realistically, water and sewer rates are just going to keep rising and rising and rising. You know, when we deal with inflation and everything. So I want to be supportive in any which way that I can, but I also want to be mindful as I advocate for our citizens, our most vulnerable citizens, and our families that are struggling. You know, I just want there to be some kind of hope and some plan. So I definitely, again, I'm not here to cause turmoil, but to understand, have a better understanding and get educated. And again, I did like and appreciate that Supervisor Gore did attend our meeting last night. And I do want to emphasize the importance of having that, you know, that assistance, financial assistance.
And, you know, Christina, you know, I find it hard to believe that that there won't at some point be some federal assistance, especially with the new administration. And as we get to 2027, when we have to have that tertiary water treatment system put in, I'm confident that there will be some type of federal grants to accomplish that. I can't imagine anyone looking at these numbers expecting a population of 10, maybe 12,000 by then to foot the bill for that. So,
Gus, yeah, you're absolutely right. The federal government recently, I would say the last 10 years, has been less participatory in helping finance large infrastructure projects, and that's bad on them. However, they you know, you hear it all the time, infrastructure. And I think the federal government is realizing that they just can't let this nation's infrastructure continue to deteriorate and expect to be a first-class, you know, nation. So again, talk to your representatives, not only here in the city, at the state, at the federal level, that, you know, there are a lot of infrastructure needs. We've neglected them. We've been sitting on them for such a long time. And, you know, we have catastrophic failures that make the headlines, but, you know, a wastewater treatment plant that's getting fined all the time doesn't make the news. And that's the reality, is that if we don't meet our mandates, we get fined, and those are costly. They're not just like $100 here, $100. No, we're talking about $1 million. So just be aware of it. We do need federal help for all these projects. In terms of forgivable loans is the most basic needs out there. So talk to your representatives. That's what I can say, Christina.
Well, we're starting to run out of time, so I
Thank
just want
you.
to see if there's any more questions for Mark before I let Chief Ferguson have a couple minutes to say hello.
I did have one more quick question, if I may, Councilmember Wolter. There is some concern about, and maybe you can help shed a light and give some peace of mind, Mark, but there's some concern about the odor that we've been smelling in the community, and it smells like sewage. Is there something that you can help us, just again, give us peace of mind? Because I did express my concern to Councilmember or Vice Mayor Cruz about the fact that, you know, when I smell that, I'm very hesitant to drink my water. And so she did, you know, give me some information, but if you can help shed light to that, I would really appreciate it.
It's really hard to identify the source of smells. I know that when PG&E had their power shutoffs or asked for curtailments because we were exceeding the capacity of the electrical system, we cut back on our bubblers at the wastewater treatment plant, and that kind of made things smell stink, basically. And so that was an operational decision to help support PG&E through their crises, or through our, you know, but we do have a generator down there that can run the plant, and we will not be turning those bubblers off again, because it's the biggest energy consumption, but it's absolutely necessary for the wastewater treatment plant. So I do recall we got numerous complaints about, there was a 2-week period where it stunk. That's on us, and we own that. As we move to advanced treatment, processing of waste tends to be more enclosed. And so a lot of wastewater treatment plants, the newer ones especially, are in massive buildings where you have trains of treatment facilities. The sludge is handled behind closed doors, etc. You don't even know they're there. San Francisco Zoo is a perfect example. Under San Francisco Zoo is the San Francisco wastewater treatment plant, Pacific. And you would never know it was there because they run a tight ship and keep the odors under control. Odor control is a big issue for wastewater treatment plants. We don't have odor control. The best I can do short term would be to string up some misters that would give you a nice, you know, lemon scent or whatever, Febreze scent. But you know, for the most part, I would say of our old facility I've been at, Cloverdale's facility does not smell when it's operating correctly. And like I said, that 2-week period, it kind of stopped. Other smells that you may occur, we got a lot of vineyards around here. When they process their waste, you smell that at a distance as well. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint it. I know we had that one incident, but I'll leave it there. But Christina, by all means, give me a call. If you see it smells, let's go and investigate.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Chief Ferguson, what's happening at the PD?
Really, I kind of gave my report. We were really just going to cover the vaccination rollout, our participation in that, and how well it's going. I did text Lieutenant Parker to see if they were still having the same success this morning, but he hasn't gotten back to me, which means it probably is. And the only other thing I was going to do very briefly is just let everybody know where we're at on the weather situation. We're still in a flash flood watch. When I mean watch, there's not going to be any significant major concerns, but it is in that LNU complex where the Glass Fire, Myers, and Walbridge fires were for debris. That's going to remain until 5 tonight. Should that change and it moves to a warning, you'll see a WIA come out from the county like you remember seeing. I think yesterday it came out. When it turns into a warning, they'll alert folks. As far as today's forecast, showers are likely and possibly thunderstorms between 10 and 4. And then slight chance of rain and thunderstorms after 4. But the amount of rain is very small, between 1/10 and 1/4 inch. And then tonight, 20% chance of rain before 10. Otherwise, mostly cloudy and patchy foggy. So that's your weather report today.
Thank you, Chief.
Welcome.
Well, if there's no more questions, I'd like to thank staff, Chief Ferguson, City Manager David Kelly, and of course, City Engineer Mark Rincon. Susie, would you please save those slides? Mark may be coming back at the request of either Vice Mayor Cruz or Mayor Turner to once again go over, especially as we near the vote for the increase in the sewer and water rates. So if you could just hang on to those, I appreciate it. Melanie, thank you. Christina, thank you for attending. And Al, look forward to chatting with you again soon. Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Gus. Thank you.